I'm Mondo, and this is Life Under the Sun. California, the state where I was born, where I raised my family, and where I operate my business. It is unquestionably beautiful, and if you listen to our governor, this nation state is the 5th largest economy in the world. And yet, millions of our friends, family, and neighbors are selling everything they own, including their oceanfront homes and oftentimes their businesses, to leave California for what they believe will be a better life. If you ask them why they would leave such a rich and beautiful state, they will usually be more than happy to tell you. Hell, even if you don't ask them, they'll probably tell you anyways. They'll tell you it's overpriced, overcrowded, overtaxed, overregulated, and overrun with homeless, and completely controlled by one political party that is seemingly hell-bent on more of the same policies that have made it so difficult for the average family to survive here. Of course, for those of us who still live here, know that this is nothing new. But what many people don't know is that if you fly into either San Francisco or Los Angeles and drive in between, you will find what you probably don't expect: a whole lot of rural America. In between the crotch and armpit of 2 major cities is some of the most beautiful landscape on this earth, and is also the heart of the state's largest industry, which isn't Google, Netflix, or Hollywood. It's agriculture. An industry that most of us completely ignore until that ignorance is slapped out of our mouths when we were hit with seemingly ridiculous food prices. When a tiny basket of fruit costs $10, then that's a problem that even a kid could understand. And yet, the grown-ups in the room still can't fix the problem. So today, we're going to have an in-depth conversation with 2 of my favorite kind of people, Phil and Carell, who own and operate the Luz de Valle commercial apple farm and Arabian horse ranch. This farm, which has been in their family since the 1800s, is nestled in the coastal hills of California's Central Coast. In addition to being a farmer, Carell has 2 master's degrees, one in public policy and the other in agriculture. And in an era where the typical family sells their home every 6 years, I am sure that she's going to have a different point of view. And she's agreed to go on camera.
Did I just eat a bunch of worms in this apple right here?
No worms in that apple.
The horse doesn't care.
The little rough spots on there are from a fungal disease, which is known as scab. These are organic apples, so oftentimes we have a few little imperfections, which are not harmful to people, but maybe more like blemishes.
Is that why organic apples are so much more expensive?
Organic apples are more expensive because we have less of a market, if you will. It's not like you can run into the big chain stores, and they are starting. It's getting better, but we have to get more for the apples we do produce, and that's why there is a little bit of a price differential there.
Makes sense. So, how long has this farm been in your family?
We have been here since about 1880. The family had been in California on my grandfather's side since about 1860, and then they...
Well, you've been here since the 1860s?
Well, they've been in California since 1860.
Wow.
And then they had been down in the Monterey Bay area, and they wanted to be fruit growers more than producing hay crops, and so they finally, I guess, scraped together enough money to buy about 200 acres in this valley.
That's remarkable. I mean, I was reading the stat. The average American family lives on their property for like less than 5 years now.
Yeah, it's pretty rare. So we're pretty proud that we have a history here.
I mean, that bodes the question. I mean, you have a neighbor that's selling their house for $10 million.
Yeah, 11.
11?
Or more.
Excuse me.
Or more.
All right. So, I mean, how do you avoid the temptation of selling? And is a small farm, is that even viable?
Oh, those are all really complicated land use questions, right up my alley. small farms can still be viable. We're going to start with that. It is a struggle, especially when there's just two people basically operating it and farming it. We don't hire a lot of outside labor because sometimes labor is just hard to get, especially for a smaller farm.
We run into that problem when it's time to harvest the apples. We gotta call in friends, family,
Right.
and any help we can get.
Yeah, because
Picking apples is hard work and it doesn't pay that well.
nope, we do the best we can. We actually pay a premium here to bring friends and family often in to pick for us because we can't compete with the bigger ranches who have acres and acres that you can offer for them to come, set up once, make a ton of money and leave because we're relatively small. So that question is sort of like, yes, it is a struggle, but you can still have a viable family farm. What about the temptation to sell? I think farming is in your blood, and if you can hang on to your farm, you feel obligated. You feel like there's a legacy there that you want to protect. Being outdoors and being able to work with nature, that has its own satisfaction that you can't get maybe in an office job, which I did for many years. No slight there to my beloved bosses who I worked for, but it's a lifestyle that you just really feel is in your blood. Money's not everything.
This isn't a tiny farm. You're not on like 2 acres of land here. How big is this?
We have 17 total acres, and probably about 10 of them are currently under production in some form.
And I'm looking around here, and how many? There's like thousands of trees. It's unbelievable. I cannot believe how much fruit is on each and every one of these trees. It's astounding.
We produced about 130,000 pounds of apples last year, and it was kind of an average year last year. So it's a lot of apples. And we've sold the bulk of it last year to Martinelli's for their juice. We also sell to some of the smaller hard cider producers because they're kind of an up and coming market for us. And we now have varieties that are starting to be more attractive to the young hard cider producers. So we've opened up one part of the orchard just for them.
That sounds good to me. I'm looking forward to trying some hard cider at this right here. I'll get drunk like Grandpa used to get drunk. That's just fine with me. So, and you're talking about labor and not making much. My mother did taxes for a living, and she did farm taxes, and they kept getting dinged by the IRS. And they came in, they're like, okay, we need to see the receipts. And the guy's like, look, man, I pay my farm hand $500 a week. I pay my cook $500 a week. And then I have one dimwit who does 90% of the work, works 90 hours a week. And my mom looked at the numbers and she said, you need to get rid of the cook, and you need to get rid of the farmhand. And well, who's a dimwit? And the owner of the farm raised his hand.
I'm the dimwit.
That's me.
That's pretty true. Yeah, it's true.
The work never ends.
The work never ends.
How hard is it?
It's always a work in progress.
Yeah.
How hard is it let's talk about the labor aspect of it, because that's big. How hard is it to find labor?
For smaller farms, it can be very challenging. Phil and I kind of had a running joke that we took over the ranch, which was in about 2014, and we were at the confluence of every possible negative thing that could possibly happen to a farm. We were in the middle of a drought, so water started skyrocketing. They were starting to tighten up the labor laws and the immigration laws, so you couldn't really find labor. We had one whole year where that first year or the second year where we couldn't get labor. They just fell on the ground. There was nothing we could do. We begged and went to everybody that we thought could help, and there was no labor to be had.
So when they fall on the ground, that's it?
That's it. You're done. So we had 1 year like that. It's kind of, you brought up the IRS, and it is a challenge to work around. We have some funny stories about the IRS. And
I love funny stories.
well, our friends, the Martinellis, went under audit a few years back. This is now, what, 15 years ago?
Yeah.
And the IRS looked at their, how they run their operation, which is a very unique fresh fruit, not concentrate. And they were like criticizing them for how they produce their product.
Why don't you
make
your
you
apple juice
from concentrate?
concentrate?
Wait,
And
this is
they-
the IRS telling them?
Yes,
Telling them
yes.
how
They've
to
been
run
doing
their
this
business.
stuff since the freaking.
1868.
We're talking like Civil War days, and now the IRS is coming in and telling them how to run their business.
They're telling them that their books don't make sense because they make their product from fresh fruit. So there's a big gap and some kind of education that the IRS could benefit from, because farming is unique. Every single terroir, if you will, is different. Every single grower is different. You can't take a large operation and compare it to how you run a small operation. It's kind of sadly comical that that they make it challenging, and a lot of the old things that you could write off, you can't really write off anymore. So that, of course, impacts your bottom line.
That's what really hurts the most is the water bills, labor bills, if you get labor,
Yep.
and and the taxes. It's a struggle for anybody who works on a ranch.
Meet Phil, probably the coolest dude you've never met. And you've never met him because he's a true grit, sun-up to sundown Renaissance man from a different century. When he's not working the farms or breaking in the horses, he operates one of our nation's last remaining steam trains. There are some people in this world that are definitely worth listening to because you know that they're going to give it to you straight. And these are the same kind of people that will tell you where the punches are coming from, how things used to be, how things are now, and how they should be. Hey guys, I hope you're enjoying the interview. And if you are, there's a couple ways that you can really help out the channel. The simplest way, hit the like, subscribe, and notification button. The next way you can help is if you know of or own a local business that you think should be featured in a future episode, then put the name of the business down either in the comment section below or just contact us. And lastly, if you really want to help, you can go to our website, www.lifeunderthesun.us, where you can get a discount not only on this business, but on the future businesses that we plan on featuring in the future. These range from restaurants, chiropractors, dentists, construction services, real estate, insurance, and of course, photography and web design. So let's support the local businesses that make our communities great. So thank you, and let's get back to the interview.
Mother Nature beats us up. The federal government beats us up. It's like, and we kind of just
That's what happens
wait
when
for
you
the
get a
next shoe.
population that has lost their connection to the land. They
Right.
don't know where their food comes from. They don't know how it's produced.
Yep.
Quite frankly, you can ask any school kid, where does your chocolate milk come from? And they'll usually say from a brown cow
If they don't say it's from the store.
or from the store.
From the
They
store?
make it in the store. Yeah.
Well, I'm a business owner, and so I can relate to some of these things, right? Any business is going to have some of the same fundamentals, right? You're going to have your expenses, which are a combination of your labor, your materials, and then your actual business expenses, things like insurance
Right.
and taxes, and you have to hire specialists to know some of these things. So I want to talk about each one of these
Okay.
because
We're good with that.
I find it fascinating. So starting with the labor, which is typically the most expensive. How much do you guys pay these guys to come out and pick apples? I mean, is that part of the problem?
It can be, I think, and it's very dynamic right now too, because there's some new programs coming online that are changing how that dynamic works. But we pay piecework right now for
What does that
picking by the bin,
Okay.
and my neighbors probably won't like me because we pay better than a lot of people. But we pay about $30 a bin. A bin weighs about 1,000 pounds.
So 1,000 pounds. And
To pick 1,000 pounds, roughly 1,000 pounds of apples, we pay $30. Everybody else would like to pay less.
And are they independent contractors kind of thing, or do you hire
These are at this point, these are friends,
These are
friends and
friends.
family. We have friends who have lost their jobs, they're out of work.
So if
they
I'm
want.
looking for a job, I can
You could come
I can
over
come on down
and
for $30.
yeah,
the
we for
farm
30 bucks.
labor, commercial farm labor that's out there, they're going to go after the bigger farms. They're going to go after the strawberries. They're going to go after the grapes, things that pay a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you advertise then for labor then? If you're not, I mean,
At this point, we don't have to. We have a family that comes in and helps us, which is great.
well, that's amazing. So how many bins can you pick in a day?
Phil and I can pick about 6 bins in a day,
If we're lucky.
if we're
between the two
lucky.
of us.
Between the two
and
of you.
that's a joke because our one guy that we love dearly, who's a friend, he can pick 10 by himself.
Yeah. So how many? That's $300 a day.
Yeah, he's booking, and that's his play money. Like if you had, has a regular job, works Monday through.
$300 a day is nothing to sneeze at. I mean,
No.
that's a decent chunk of change.
No, and he's awesome. So we love him, and he'll bring in like his daughter or somebody else to help him. But
And how does that work? Is that just a straight business expense?
Yeah.
Or do you have to pay them? Do you have to pay?
I don't.
Social
Yeah,
Security
we're not
taxes and all those
doing.
kind of things?
Yeah, we don't consider him an employee. He's a private contractor, and I have to report his income. But we've been very fortunate that we have people who will help us, who become friends. I mean, people who work for us really aren't just strangers anymore. They're predominantly people that we've known for years who, need a little extra money, and we'll do it as a side job. And
Guys, $300 a day. I mean,
yeah,
that's $1,500 a week.
yeah, but it ends, right? It's like, we need you this week. We have 30 bins to pick. Pick those bins.
So when does it start? How long is the picking season? When does it go?
Our heaviest
Actually
picking started.
last month.
Last month?
Yep, we started with our Gravensteins, and we actually that was all friends and family that helped us.
So that's in like late summer, kind of July kind of thing?
Late July.
Okay.
And then now we're moving into the galas, and that's also going to be probably our friends and family that help with that. That's only about 30 bins or so. The Fujis are the hardest to manage. They come in late. They're in October. But the good thing about that is that strawberry season ends in like late
And the grape
September.
season's ended.
And the grape people are done. We're always like watching what our other, farmers are doing. When grape season is over, that frees up a lot of people who aren't ready to go back home, which is, we're assuming they're going back home to Mexico.
So you got people that do this for a living, but then
Yes.
you also open it up to friends and family. So
Right.
if somebody wanted to pick up some extra money, hey, I'll come out and hang out here and hang out with the horses and pick some apples, how would they? Can they just drive up to your farm and knock on the door, or they call you? Or?
We're pretty cautious because we just don't want, too many strangers coming and going. That
Yeah.
could be a little bit of a difficulty, a little scary. So mainly it's people that know people that know people. So
Okay,
it's like
word of mouth kind of thing.
if it's like one
We
of
don't
our,
really want to go to like the Home Depot parking lot.
no, we haven't done that yet.
And
So, yeah.
you don't want to get anybody off the street, especially around Santa Cruz. First, a lot of these folks are
Drug
drug
addicted.
addicted, and they're going to do whatever's necessary to get that fix,
Yeah.
which can be detrimental here.
Yeah.
Also, I hate to say it, but in our society, it's very class oriented. You're not going to get somebody who has worked in an office all his life come out and pick apples. He won't know how.
Yeah, we tried that once.
It didn't work.
Like half a bin, and then I think I'm not coming back tomorrow.
Yeah, I think.
Or if they just don't show up. It's like
It is, hard.
hard work.
It's
Hard
really
work.
hard,
There's
heavy
just
work.
I
Your
have an
son,
affinity for this. My father was first generation American. My grandfather came here from Mexico, and my father grew up in the Bay Area picking apples. They had a bunch of running jokes. I mean, he called himself, he was like the human octopus. He's like, he had 8 arms. He'd go out there, and he was, 12, 14 years old. He would pick and get a grown man's wage, and before school would start. And then he would, for every dollar he made, he'd give it to the family. He was able to keep a quarter. And, he felt like,
he was making
Like
he was
he-
making big money.
yeah, he was a big part of it.
Our friend that picks for us, we had 2 friends who lost their job as a result of COVID, and they needed money. They just bought a new house, so they're trying to now make their mortgage, and then he has no job. So
they bought a house, and they're out here
they're
helping to supplement their mortgage payments.
right, because they're hurting because COVID's bad, and we let them pick the Gravensteins. And they picked, what was it, the first day? Like 4 bins?
A bin and a half, 2 bins maybe.
I don't know. It was
Yeah.
pretty. And we told them about Domingo, and they're like, well, we need to watch him. We need to know how he picks.
Yeah.
One of
'cause
our
he'll-
friends is Domingo. He works for our contractor, but
Right.
when things are slow, he comes out here and helps. Little fella, about this tall. He can work anybody under the table. I
Anybody.
swear.
That
He's
man-
a hard-working man.
And he and his family have actually become like part of our family. We just, when he comes out to work and we take breaks in the barn, we buy lunch for him and we sit around and talk and we catch up with, where their kids are and how are they doing school at this point in time with COVID. And so, I mean, it's really like we are fortunate that the people that work for us are friends.
My dad, so he picked all the way through high school until he joined the Navy. And he said as soon as he was Mexican until he went to college. And then he became Spanish.
Oh, very different.
So the class the class thing it's pretty deep and it goes all ways there.
Yep.
Now you guys mentioned about water, and this is something people are asking me to ask you about this. Because you guys have been here for so long, how has the history of water rights changed?
Oh, there's been quite a lot of changes in water rights in California in general. And when we first started farming here, the main water source was just natural springs. They just came off the hill. And they had old wooden water tanks on the sides of the hills, and they'd collect the water and they could water the trees and the crops. So that was kind of our way of doing it then. And then they got a little bit of money and they put in a well, but the weird thing about this valley is the San Andreas Fault has a piece that runs right across the valley. So you have lots of water coming from up the valley, it hits the fault, and then there's no water down here hardly at all. I mean, you could go 1,000 feet down and you probably
Really?
wouldn't hit water.
So does that mean the well dried up?
The well's pretty much useless. I mean, we could get like a few gallons a minute, but not enough to water the whole thing. So we do have, my family contracted years back when they started with the Central Water District here.
Okay. So you get your water just like a regular house?
We are like a regular residential user now. We used to have a little bit of a price break on water because we had what they call an ag tap, meaning they call it a temporary tap, meaning that they can shut us off at any time. So they gave us a price break because we were a temporary tap. Well, the state law changed, and now no matter who you are, if you're a residential user on the system or a commercial ag user, you pay the same rate.
Really?
Yes,
So
same bracketing.
My house is down the street, so when I run a shower, you're paying the same amount of money to water your trees as I am when I'm running.
Pretty much, yeah, except you're in a different water district from us.
Is that fair?
Well, not quite fair, no.
I mean, because your water bill's got to be astronomical.
It's
It is
phenomenal.
They literally told us that the money they're getting from us is paying to upgrade the water lines in Valencia.
They use
Yeah, I believe that.
the ag taps are the money that they divert over to fix their broken infrastructure, their worn out dead pipes up the valley, up the canyon up there.
Now, with that being said, we are looking into more and more water harvesting.
We can do that to a degree.
Water harvest, you mean like
Rainwater
having
harvest.
bins from your roofs and
Water off the roof
would that
of the
even
barn.
make a difference? I mean,
It would make a dent.
It would make a dent?
It would help.
Make a dent.
And right now anything would help. Right now, anything would help.
We're talking.
because
also-
we're under the public like myself. Well, I thought you guys got it like at pennies on the dollar compared with the rest of us.
Used to have a good deal.
I watched the news and they're like, you guys are sucking up all the water.
Over in the valley, it's very water. I wouldn't want to be fighting those battles because it really is kind of a us and them thing between ag and the residential users.
Even here, the preferential use for water is residential.
Right.
That just doesn't seem right.
And
But
they
yet,
can.
Here's the ironic thing: is especially around here, people move here because they love the ambiance of seeing the orchards and the farms, and it's so pretty and so nice. Oh, look at the view, but they don't realize that without that water, that view will go away.
It'll go definitely away. And what's also interesting is we're surrounded by farmland. Still, grapes, olives, few more apples here and there up the valley. And the people who have other ag taps like we do, there's only 13 I think in the district, can't lease out their land for like row crops and stuff, because the farmers that know the numbers know they can't make any money because they have such a high water bill.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
So those
that's almost
all-
unsurmountable.
You
I
have
mean,
to almost fallow out all
Our
of our
neighbors,
ag
you know,
land.
They got a sign out there saying, you know, farmland for lease.
Yeah.
No one's going for it because there's no water.
Well, there's
Well,
water,
there's
but
water,
you.
but it's just, all right, you know, I grew up sailing through the Delta and out the Golden Gate, and people don't realize how big that is. The second largest freshwater area in the continent. All right, just next to the Mississippi. I mean, and all that water just goes out the Golden Gate Bridge. And I took a trip with my family. We went down to Palm Springs, and there was golf courses and green lawns everywhere. And those people were paying the same rate of water than what we're paying right here for the food that we eat.
Yeah, it's California. I actually took a class when I was working on my master's degree on water in California, and the history is fascinating. I mean, the personalities involved,
Yeah.
and you know the whole Owens Valley deal, and
Well, then, without
We were
going,
just-
because we're not going to be here for 3 hours on
yeah,
this,
but
but what's the solution then?
you know, it's all economics. It all comes down to economics. And when you have something, a commodity, such as water, that is precious, and you try to find a balance, it's very, very difficult. We would like to think that agriculture is a public benefit, and therefore we could ask for a better rate on our water. A lot of the water that we use doesn't go up and, you know, transpires out of the trees. A lot of it goes right back into the aquifers.
Yeah.
We are only watering usually in apple crops. We are only watering July, August, maybe into September, 3 months of the year. We're not constant like a more residential setting, a golf course, for example. And we would think that maybe the legislature would consider that and make laws a little bit more favorable to us so we could afford to farm and produce food. Whether that's a reality, I don't know. You know, there's so few of us compared to the masses in Los Angeles and the big urban areas. But it would definitely make it more logical and viable to farm, keep more farms going, open up land that currently is fallowed because nobody can afford the water. And eventually, you know, it works down. I mean, food costs could be a little less.
Yeah.
You know, if my costs go down, I don't have to, you know, charge as much.
That's my next question to you then, because us as consumers, we're really starting to see the price of especially healthy types of food, all right, vegetables and stuff like that. It's going through the roof. How much of that do you get? So if I buy this apple at $2 a pound, or a strawberry at $5 a pound, or a blueberry at your left arm a pound, you know, how much of that actually trickles down to you guys?
You know, it varies between the big commercial industrial farms and the little guys like us. Right now, we're not even at break even here because we're kind of going through a phase of totally trying to renovate and restore the orchard.
Wait, renovate. These are the
Yeah.
biggest, most beautiful apples trees I've ever seen. The limbs are falling off. There's so many of them.
Yep.
Well, to maintain it.
Right,
that's
and
very
they have a
expensive.
lifespan, so you'd think you'd have to put in money for reserve to replace trees.
Well, I mean,
I mean-
I want to stick to this, guys, because this is important. I run a business too, okay? And you can't expect to maintain it for very long. All right, the next generation certainly won't.
Yeah.
So, what is the markup? What are we talking about? Give us some numbers.
I would say that out of every dollar that the consumer spends, there might be, in we're talking, you know, every situation's different, maybe 10% might go to the farmer. And that's talking somebody who's not leasing land, you know, paying.
Yeah, all the expenses.
Right. By the time they cover their costs, maybe they get 10%. We're not there. We've got a million ways, we've got a lot of things we'd have to do. Now,
What, to get to 10%?
to get to 10%, we're not even close. We're not even paying ourselves at this point.
And that's, I'm a photographer and a web designer. Somebody calls me up, I dictate the rates, and they'll say yes or no. Mm-hmm. And that will adjust my prices. Do you guys get to do that?
Yeah, it's traditionally in agriculture, and this is something I don't think the general population understand, is that in agriculture, you are much more of a price taker than a price maker. You are out in the world competing sometimes with your own group.
No, that makes sense.
I'm an organic
Capitalism,
grower,
that's how that's supposed to be.
but you don't always get to set what you can't look at all your costs and go, well, I'd like to make 10% above that or 20% above that, and I'll just add to that price. That is not how it works in agriculture.
Has it always been that way, or is this
Pretty much,
recently?
yeah, and that's why farming has always been a big challenge.
You can never make a good profit if the people that buy from you are the ones that set the prices.
Yeah, it can be very challenging. Now, there's a lot of things going on in agriculture, and we've seen it over the last 40 years. I have, because I'm that old now. But more and more consolidation in the big industries. There's more and more small farms closing down, big farms buying them out. There's a lot more power when you're a large company than when you're just a little individual farmer, and which is good and bad. For the consumer, it may not be good, because then it limits what's in the market to what makes money. So you might not be able to go in and buy some sort of rare, interesting heirloom variety anymore, because the big guys say, we don't make any money on that. We need a crop that can ship 3,000 miles and still look good in the store. And so your variety and diversity out in the stores gets less, because what gets produced is only the stuff that they can really,
Designer apples.
Yeah.
Washington are the big thing.
yeah, the Costco apples, we call them.
All right, now I'm curious about this, because we're hearing about this. We're now in a global economy. Mm-hmm. So are your competitors, it's pretty hard to compete with you if you're down the street, because they have the same issues. Mm-hmm. Are they coming from China? We heard that China cornered one of the apple tree markets or something like that. Is that something that's continuing?
There's stuff going on. It's definitely impacting. The small organic farmer, it's not hitting them quite as distinctly as somebody like Martinelli's. Because, for example, Martinelli's is produced predominantly still from fresh fruit, at least their premium lines are. And you can get apple juice concentrate from China shipped over here for, pennies for a gallon, say. So a producer like maybe one of those big companies up in Washington, they can buy concentrate and make juice for nothing compared to what it costs Martinelli's to make a really fresh apple quality juice. So it is impacting, and we know it's impacting in the garlic market. It hasn't impacted there's more going on with strawberries in Mexico and South America now than there was. That's starting to change, but strawberries are so fragile that they don't ship tremendously well from hemisphere to hemisphere. So that there's a lot of dynamics going on in that industry. But China and the southern hemisphere are, they're edging in here with some stuff.
Are they catching up, or are they taking advantage of it somehow?
I think they're trying to find their own niche. So because they produce opposite us.
If I bit this and let it bite out of my mouth, what would happen?
She would do it.
She'd take it.
She would take
would do it?
Yeah, she would.
I don't know if I'm that brave.
She's pretty careful. She's
Pretty
been
careful?
good with. We have lots of kids
right.
that come and visit, and she's really pretty
All right,
gentle.
steady Cam, you got this? There we go. There you go.
Pressy, look.
Mm-hmm.
She goes, you have to come down to my level.
Oh,
She almost.
no way.
You had to hang on
You got
longer.
the apple, though.
Yeah, you have to hang on longer.
Only my wife could kiss me like that.
One of the interesting things about the Chinese market, they want to sell apples over here, but they prefer to buying like the Martinelli's juice out there.
Yeah.
That's true.
They trust the apple juice from Martinelli's. They trust the name.
Yeah. They're still, being a brand, noted for quality, is still has tremendous value around the world. So that's great for them, but we're probably never going to sell apples to anybody in Saudi Arabia or China. But
really, so that's disappointing. You think that with this globalization, it might be good for American farmers? 'Cause
small
you might be able
growers, yeah, we're kind of the buy local kind of people. You know,
then that's the next question then. Okay, so if the markup at the grocery store is that high, and what they're paying you is that low, nowadays with the social media, I mean, it seems viable that you can go directly to your customers now.
yeah, farmers
Is
markets.
that something that you're trying to do?
Farmers markets are huge and have really caught on in the last 30 years, which I think is that's awesome. And that is the salvation of the smaller grower. We're trying something different here because we have something a little bit special in our orchard about our history and my love for actually teaching people. I was a teacher for 8 or 10 years of my life, and teaching them about what we do and why we do it, and because a lot of that history is lost now.
And so how are you different than you?
So we're bringing people in for a U-pick where
Okay.
they can spend a couple hours here, pick some apples, walk around, I answer questions, give them a deeper understanding of how and why we do what we do here, which is a much more eco-friendly way of farming.
Yeah.
We are kind of unique in some ways. We not only produce apples, but we also provide a lot of habitat for pollinators and wildlife. So we do things kind of differently, and we have to explain that to people because they look at our orchard and they go, "What are all these weeds out here? These are weeds." I go, "No, many of them are wildflowers, and there's a reason the reason why we keep them."
So as a
here.
member of the public, we could just come out here and set up a time with you and come out and pick all the apples we want?
That's right. Yep.
And all right,
And feed a horse an apple.
Discovered
feed
that
horses and apples?
a lot of times, especially now in this new urban environment, families need to do things outside. They need to kind of reconnect with the outdoors
Yeah.
and just have a day in the farm.
Okay. So what should the role, if any, the government be in farming and all this?
The government has been, ever since, I would say, the Depression, the government's been intimately involved in farming. With the crash of the market and then how the,
Which one?
in 29.
Oh, back, so
Yeah,
all the way back in the Great Depression time.
they've started to they've been really intimately involved with different programs for soil health and habitat protection and, kind of dovetailing farming with helping the ecosystem. And so they have been having quite a role since that time. Most of it good. Some have been a little misguided. But we have quite a few programs where we can get assistance from the government, which we completely appreciate.
Now, to just play devil's advocate here, is that welfare?
It would be considered socialist or socialism, I'm sure.
So socialism is good if it's working for you, kind of thing?
Yeah, I think most farmers are kind of, they're conflicted.
The farm bill
They're-
comes up to Congress.
No,
Things are always
I don't
added
want
or
your face in my
subtracted
face.
from it. And that usually benefits the bigger corporate
It can.
farmers.
It can, yeah. But we've benefited from several good government programs, and I think farmers are very conflicted. On the one side, you'll see all of them say, "Oh, we don't like all the socialism out there, and
We don't want those hippie fit folks."
we shouldn't be giving money away to people." And then they're the first ones to sign up for. I'd like some money to fix my irrigation system. So it's kind of fun. It's kind of sad and kind of funny, but. Because we are price takers and because we are of public benefit, I think there are many areas we could look at as far as taxation. One of the things that I think they've been trying to develop is an inheritance situation where, our land can sometimes be worth a fair amount, but then you pass it on to your kids and they have to sell it off to a developer sometimes to pay the inheritance tax, for example. So while they may still want to be in farming, which a lot of kids will still say, my dad farmed and I want to farm, but I can't because now I have to pay, this huge inheritance tax when my dad passes away. So I think there are areas there that there could be some help, shifting tax law around a little bit, shifting water law around a little bit to give us some relief from, the pricing structure that they have us adhered to now, here anyway. Maybe something to do with energy costs. A lot of farms are trying to maybe move more into solar and more sustainable energy. But that's a huge upfront cost, which when you're a farmer, sometimes you don't have a lot of money to put into, infrastructure for that. There's areas where we could definitely get more help, and that helps sometimes slow in coming because we're not valued. We're not valued like maybe some big corporate company.
All right, then I guess. The biggest expense in running a business is your labor. Mm-hmm. And housing is the biggest expense for the labor.
Right.
So what role should the government have?
They are getting involved. They are getting involved. And what the hardest thing for our labor is, as you can see, we're very seasonal. Now you've made a friend for life. You're in trouble. So because we deal with the seasonality of our crops and needing our labor in different areas, housing is just one of those things that's very difficult. They are working on some programs. The government has some programs now where we can bring people in with very, very stringent management. There's a couple companies, 2 companies that are able to bring people over the border and have them work, but you have to provide housing, you have to provide a lot of amenities for them, and they are treated like they're contractors, so the contractors treat them like employees. They pay them a very fair wage. That's been always a complaint that a lot of times our labor has been abused financially. But they provide benefits for them, but then when they're done with our season, they can go back home. They can go back to their own native country, and these programs are being tested right here now in the Pajaro Valley by a couple of apple growers, and we're probably going to meet this week and get some reports back on how successful they were, whether they were cost effective or if they're just so expensive that they're not going to give us any room for profit.
Okay, so my question on this, so you're bringing in international workforce,
Mm-hmm.
and they're getting job that pays with benefits,
Mm-hmm.
and they're getting a housing. That's
Mm-hmm.
a pretty good deal. What about Americans? I mean, why can't we just build housing for us regular people, and they can do the jobs and go from Watsonville to Salinas to here and pick as things goes on?
What?
Almost an attitude.
Right.
that Being a white American, I'm entitled. I don't have to work so hard to make my money.
Right. I can be in
it's
air
unfortunate
conditioning in an office and make a living, and like I said, we have friends who we love dearly who come out here and they can't cut it. They cannot work that hard in the heat, and they're done. They not for any price would they do it. Mm-hmm. So it's we're kind of dependent on our neighbors across the border, south of us, to come up here and help. And their economy's improving, we hear, so it's not as tempting for them to come up here and work and then go back home. Mm-hmm. So it's very fascinating to see how the world is changing, and we're trying to keep up and figure out ways that we can keep labor and make it fair for them. In the past, it was even some of the well-known, better programs like the Bracero program, there was abuse by big growers. They would, promise to pay a certain amount, and then they would take, it was like a company store, they would take out, here's, here, you have to pay for this and you have to pay for that, and then you have to pay for your own picking bag, and then no, you don't get any benefits. And so they'd come up here and work their tails off and wind up with nothing. Yeah, it was those programs. That's over. We will never allow that to happen again. That was a human rights violation technically, and certainly it had no social equity. So much more stringent controls make it harder to get labor, but it also makes it theoretically more fair to the labor that we do have, and that's pretty critical in my mind.
So with any business, there's the equation of profit is your income minus your expenses. And it's obvious that there are a lot of people making a lot of money from agriculture. It's the #1 industry in the state, which was surprising to me. I thought it was Hollywood or video games or tech companies or real estate or something. No, it's our agriculture. And so without the production aspect of it, without any parts of these equations, it doesn't work. Are you guys on the wrong side? Is this equation fair to you, or is it working for you?
You know, I'm a believer in the capitalist system. I really am, but it's harder and harder to survive as a farmer under the basic laissez-faire, as they say, capitalism.
Is this capitalism if the market price is set by outside forces, the labor is regulated by the government, the housing is regulated by the government, the healthcare is regulated by the government? Is this capitalism?
It is really now pretty well tainted. Yeah, we're dealing with so much more, and it's. I think a lot of things are done because they are misguided. You know, there's a lot of decisions that are made in Sacramento and Washington, D.C. that are made by people who really do not understand the industry, don't understand the economics, and they are more responsive to getting votes and from their constituents than they are from doing what would be the right thing to find that balance in the economy where we can still produce our own food and be of benefit. Versus how many votes can I get if I, you know, do this particular law or that. You know, there's a gap in there.
This is what gets me from my business. We basically, in California, and honestly most of the states now in the union, it's basically a one-party system. It's either all Republican or all Democrat. And so California is obviously, we're virtually a one-state party. And you would think, at least from my point, that couldn't necessarily be all bad, because if you're in a one-party state, the stuff you would think could get done really quickly.
Oh yeah.
Is this a good thing for us? I mean, as a business having just one party having everything, are they representing your interests well?
I always think 2 or more, 2 minimum, is a better way to go, because then you get discussion, you get basic ideas that are challenged and balancing different viewpoints, and the best outcome is when you have debate. One party thing is never going to be adequate. So I think
mean, right now, with whatever state you're in, whatever part of the party, they could change the zoning laws immediately. Oh. They could change the water laws immediately. There's all these things that they could change. Well, I'm saying immediately, like within a year or 2 years, and it just seems like it's not changing.
Yeah, and it's because the system still relies on keeping your job, if you will, in Washington and Sacramento. And there's, there are people who would like discuss that as far as things like term limits. Well, they're up there too long. They make it a job instead of a public service kind of thing. And there is a learning curve to being a politician, to being a state legislator or national candidate. But it's one of those things where it's much more important to respond to the needs of the larger areas, and farmers are secondary still, and will be. Our numbers are too small, our voice isn't loud enough, our advocates are often infighting. If you talk about, farm type groups.
Strawberry people don't like apple people?
Sometimes, because we're in competition with one another too for labor and stuff. So I mean, it's like sometimes we don't see eye to eye, so we can't be very effective as a voice.
Okay.
So
there's no like police union or teachers union for you farmers, like you're not nearly as well run and organized?
We have infighting, so it's like there's a challenge there. Yeah, there's people, and it's funny because you brought up the whole Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal thing. We have that. We have farmers who just would love to, have tremendous social programs and the government involved in every aspect of their lives. And then we have some farmers who say, I do better if you just stay away from me.
Yeah.
Just don't come on my farm. Don't talk to me about, taxation. I just leave me alone. I'll be fine. So they're very much more libertarian types of farmers. So it's kind of humorous when you put a bunch of farmers in a room because they all can't agree.
So farms around here started in the 1870s.
Earlier, actually.
Earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Or
1830s,
is
1840s.
this the small farms? Do they survive in the next 20 years?
I think they'll find a niche. What I think I'm feeling, especially when I go to the farmers markets and kind of see how people respond, I think a good percentage of people just really love getting fresh fruit straight from the people that grow it. There's just almost a craving for that. And I think I'm seeing more and more where people want to be able to trust where their food comes from. When we meet people out of the road where our farm stand is, they all tell us, we buy from you because A, your prices are really good, and B, we knew where that food was grown and who grew it. And we feel confident that you're doing a good job for the environment and for us as consumers. So I'm happy for that. That makes my heart.
We always view it as kind of a community service.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you got me as a client, and if I can come in here and pick my fruits fresh off the vines and make pies and applesauce, and maybe you can put me in touch with someone to help me make some hard cider.
Oh yeah, we'll get you going.
And, I think that's fantastic. So well, let's go take a look at these trees.
Yeah, let's go look at some galas. So we are walking through the orchard right now, and these are predominantly our gala apples, which are ready to harvest right now.
Ooh, I can grab one right now?
You could.
Don't mind if I do.
Be sweet and ripe. And what we find is really interesting, we try to educate our consumers, and one of the things is that not all apple varieties are ripe at the same time. Many are late apples, and then these are an earlier apple. And the other thing is, because people so much of the time buy their apples in the regular grocery stores, they think apples are available all year round, or actually they are available all year round, but they may not be fresh. Apples will be cold storaged, which means they set at a certain temperature and humidity, and they can hold over for quite some time. Many varieties will last for maybe up to 6 months in a cold storage. So most of the apples that you're getting in your store may not be fresh off the tree. And we believe, and most of our customers agree, that apples fresh off the tree are so much better than apples that have been cold storaged or stored, or apples that have come from another hemisphere, because they are growing a lot of varieties down in like Chile and Argentina in the southern hemisphere. So we'll get calls in February for picking apples, and we have to tell people, I'm sorry, our apples are available in the fall, which is the natural time in this hemisphere for apples to ripen and be available to pick.
Well, I've got a question. You can educate this customer here.
Okay.
Because I've got a little bit of land. Not. First off, guys, I got cameras everywhere here, and it's not going to show how beautiful this place is. This place is incredible. The way it smells and everything.
It's a real sensual kind of place.
So I tried to do what you did on a small scale. Mm-hmm. I bought a whole bunch of trees and planted them, and they all died.
Uh-oh.
So then I went to another friend of mine, been farming here since the 1800s, and I thought I'd get an expert opinion this time. And he got all excited. I said, okay, Mondo, you want to grow some fruit trees? This is what you do.
Uh-oh. He gave you
says,
good advice.
You dig a hole that's 3 feet wide and 3 feet deep, and you line the outside of it with mesh, and that'll keep the gophers from attacking it on the side. I'm like, okay, but then I asked him, well, what about underneath? Gophers come from underneath. He said, oh, he got even more excited. This is what you do. Dog turds. You go take dog turds and dry dog turds and you crumble them up and you put them in the hole. And a dog is kind of like a coyote. It's a natural predator, and the gopher will sense that and just kind of go away. I'm like, all right, that kind of makes sense to me. Well, I got 30 of these. 3 foot by 3 foot by 3 foot. That's half a grave. Okay, I don't own a tractor. I'm out there digging these things by myself, and I'm getting tired. And after a few of these, I'm running out of dog turds. I'm chasing my Rottweiler around, and they're starting to get fresh. So finally, I call up my buddy, and I just thought, hey man, you just me this dog turd thing, and all I heard for the next frickin' 5 minutes on the phone was ear-splitting laughter. He is howling at me, and to this day, he will not admit whether he was messing with me or not. But I will admit, every single tree we had lived.
There you go.
So can you answer this to me?
I can.
Was he f***ing with me with his dog turd thing?
Only partially. Only partially. We do have pretty.
Okay, let's go with that one.
We do have pretty sandy soil here, or very heavy clay soil. So he certainly is guiding you properly as far as digging a big hole and probably mixing in some amendments and maybe some compost in with your soil when you plant your tree. The chicken wire, we do that.
Okay.
Because gophers here are like, we call it a gopher farm because...
We figured there's at least 1,000 gophers at any given time on this ranch.
yeah, we haven't actually...
We actively hunt,
Yes.
trap them. I don't want them all because they're part of the environment.
And we don't poison. We don't believe in that.
I got to get to this thing. Dog turds.
You know, I think it's probably like an old wives' tale because I'm kind of thinking that by the time your tree puts out.
Yeah, I freaking knew it.
But I mean, he has there is a concept there.
Pete Canego, I vouch for you. You screwed me. I'm going to have my revenge.
But there is truth to many old wives' tales, so we don't want to really step on his toes.
Do you do dog turds in yours?
We do not. We do horse manure.
Well, that's different. Okay, so when you hire me to shoot your daughter's wedding, every photo of you is going to be, I'm going to Photoshop your eye slightly off in every single one, and I'm going to discolor one tooth. Because you did me wrong. I was chasing that Rottweiler for frickin' weeks trying to find dog turds.
There could be some, there's, like I said, there's a lot of truth to many old wives' tales, but I don't think you really needed to go quite that far.
A coyote will do their business on top of a gopher hole.
Yes,
The
yes.
gopher usually goes away.
Yeah, we have noticed.
So maybe there's some truth to it.
We have noticed there is a predator-prey relationship there, but we haven't figured that part of it is true yet.
Now, I was talking to another farmer friend of mine, and you guys crack me up. You guys are worse than fishermen with all the BS that comes out of you guys, man. And I can never believe half the stuff you guys say. So I was asking him about the farm business, and he said, oh, man, between the fires and the pandemic and defunding the police, the only thing that's growing around here is the crime rate.
Oh, boy.
Truth to that.
There is some truth. It's, we're all feeling, I think everybody feels that we've been just slammed with way too many diversions to kind of be able to focus on the basic part of our work, which is producing food.
Well, and speaking of producing here, we're in the Santa Cruz Hills.
Yes.
Aren't you guys producing the wrong kind of crop?
You mean grapes?
No, the green.
Apples.
I mean, it's not even illegal. You guys can't even say it. Marijuana Hill, it's illegal now.
You're thinking of the weekly phone calls and postcards that we get leasing our land for producing the more medicinal crop. And it's true. I mean, it's probably going to get better for those guys because I think
you have to realize it's still federally illegal.
Still,
the feds can still come in and confiscate everything you own.
Yeah.
And throw you in jail.
Yeah, we haven't.
I don't want to go there.
No. And our family's produced apples for now over 100 years, and I kind of have a sentimental attachment to apples. Yeah.
What's the only thing in the world that's happy, has 4 legs and 1 arm?
Happy 4 legs and 1 arm. Nope, can't do it.
A pot grower's pit bull.
Got it.
Not funny? Not funny?
Got it.
I thought that was hysterical.
One thing about an orchard like this is visual. You see the apples, you see the trees.
Right.
When you go through a lot of commercial ag places for marijuana or berries, you see hoop houses.
Hoop houses, which May not quite be as aesthetically
Aesthetically
pleasing.
unpleasing. The hoop houses get dirty, they rip, you get plastic flying all over the place. You know, the marijuana growers, they need grow rooms. You know, so you see more buildings, more development,
Right.
and they suck up the water. And you know,
Yeah,
the legal
it's-
farms, you know, they also dump a lot of chemicals.
Yeah, the illegal
just
guys
Devastates the environment.
have got to go because they are really harmful to the environment. So the legal guys are held to a little higher standard, and I think that's getting better and better. So we're happy for our neighbors who produce of the medicinal crops, but we probably won't go that road.
All right. Well then,
Besides, I work for railroads. You don't want to go on a railroad smelling like marijuana. I'm sorry.
boy.
It's a good way to lose your job.
absolutely. All right, guys. Any other trees you want to show us before we wrap this up? Because my head's about on fire here. I've had about enough
Yeah,
sun.
you're gonna get out of the sun,
Yeah.
so we'll head off.
Right
But
behind you, these are
these are Newtown pippins, which look a little beat up by the sun.
Flat looking. But that's what the Pajaro Valley was noted for.
Yep. Yep, and that's what
And are these-
Martinelli's.
These are the best for juicing or something?
great for
They're
juicing.
good juicing apples. They're a good baking apple.
They're hard to produce. They've got a lot of little quirks that
Yeah.
you have to work
They tend to grow in
around.
little bunches like that. When they get bigger, they push off each other. and
So
they
you
end
wind
in
up
the
with a lot on the ground, which is a
So
bummer.
What percentage of these just go on the ground and never make it anymore?
Ideally, in the old days, they used to have labor, and you would run picking crews several times.
Okay.
Now you're lucky to get one picking crew,
Really?
which means that you have more on the ground. So you're probably
5%,
looking
10%?
20% of the pippins at least probably on the ground. Sometimes now when labor's really short, 50% on the ground.
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
At the end of the
Used
year,
to
does
be
that break
able
your heart
to,
when you're like, that's...
Oh.
Pick up the grounders for windfalls and
When
sell
you-
them at a little cheaper price for juice.
Yeah.
But the rules are changing, and it's kind of a concern because they don't want them anymore.
Yeah.
Oh,
Now
so the apples that used to grow down, those are the ones they would pick up to go in
Yep.
the juice?
they would do that. You'd pay somebody to come along and just pick them all up and throw them in a bin, and you'd get a little lower price, but you could still capture that production. And that's changing rapidly now too. We're thinking they may not take windfalls anymore, which will hurt a lot of guys who are pretty much Newtown people. We have them just interspersed as pollinators for the most part, but
As a business, if I had a 25% loss, that would keep me up at night.
Oh,
I would
yeah.
be trying to figure out ways to rectify that.
And that's
Yep.
what the guys, who do collect windfalls, they're struggling with right now. They're just shaking their head, going,
yeah.
"We might have to lose our business."
I mean, yeah, that 20% for a lot of guys is their profit margin.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's...
And if not so much for us, because I said like we're not a Newtown pippin producer as such, but we certainly know the other guys are just shaking their heads, going, well, that was how I actually came out ahead. Now I can't even make that.
What's the solution for the labor?
I actually think that they're on the right track now with this new program. We want to hear the test. We want to hear the results of how it worked out economically.
What program is this?
It's a H2M program. So it's a highly regulated, bringing in labor out of Mexico, and we've had 2 farms, I think, 2 big farms. We can't use it because we're too small, but we had 2 big farms use it this year, and it kind of springboarded off of the old Bracero program.
Why can't you use it?
We're too small.
What do you mean? You got plenty of room
Our-
here for
our-
trailers and for housing and stuff.
I mean, the cost for us would be out of proportion with what we do. And they want to come in, set up at one big farm and just take care of that farm and then move on to another big farm. They don't want to, leapfrog from little farm to little farm. That's too time consuming, too hard for their, coordinating and timing. And so we're too little for that. But I think we're all anxious to hear, because when you have the big farms shifting to a large program, a federal program, that does possibly free up labor, contract labor or private labor for the little farms. Because now those guys are looking for jobs, right? Because the federal program people are over here at the big farm that they used to be the pickers or the pruners or whatever for. And now we think there may be a kind of this dynamic shift between now the local labor contractors who just use local farm workers will be maybe more readily available. So we're kind of anxious. We kind of want to see.
You're more mellow about this. I mean, me as a business owner and as a consumer, if I'm seeing 25, 50% of all the fruit just there on the frickin' ground, right, worthless.
Yeah.
I mean, to me, that's an absolute catastrophe. How can, what's wrong with having people come in on tiny houses or trailers, and is there something wrong with that?
A lot of liability. And then we're pretty cautious about that too, because our insurance costs are huge.
So having somebody on your property, that's the liability.
There's a lot of liability there. When you have a labor contractor come in, he assumes a lot of that liability.
Okay.
But when you have just individuals come in, you are technically hiring them, or they are
Tenants or
yeah. I mean, there's
homesteaders or
yeah, and if you don't know them, then there's problems with them bringing their dogs, and
Okay.
there's just way too much liability there. So that's why we depend mostly on people that we know well and we trust, and we know aren't gonna steal from us or cheat us or anything. So we're cautious.
I mean, if anybody's driven from San Jose to San Francisco, they realize that in between is basically barren land. And you can't tell me there's not enough room to have villages for I mean, they did it when they built the railroads.
Yeah.
They'd come through and they'd have temporary housing, and the guys would build it, and some of the communities would stick and stay.
Yeah, there's
Bill
actually
had a ranch, inherited a ranch in Bakersfield. And she was looking at building a community for the farm workers.
Yeah.
Okay? Had it on paper, talked to the architect. The politics as such basically squelched the whole thing. No
Yeah.
way are you going to do this.
And we don't actually know why that was, because actually over in the valley where they grow a lot of row crops, there's work almost year round. Unlike here, which is like grapes are done, and then you have months of nothing, and then lettuce may start up, and so I mean, but yeah, I mean I have a huge passion for equitable treatment of farm workers. I don't think they should have to live in garages and barns and under the bridge and in your car. I really think there is a way to provide decent housing for farm worker and farm worker families, and I had pursued it up to the point of trying to get it through county government, and
They wouldn't hear it.
They were
wouldn't
like,
listen to it. They said,
Yeah.
no way.
nope, nope,
All right.
She ended up selling the ranch.
yeah,
She ended up selling the ranch because of that?
yeah.
Wow.
Hey guys, if you are enjoying the content, then there's a few ways that you can help us create more. The easiest is to simply smash the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Another way that you can help us is if you know of or own a favorite local business, or if there's a place in the world that you'd like us to travel to and document, then name the destination or business in the comment section below. But the best way you can help us is to go to our website, lifeunderthesun.us, where you can get a discount on many of the local businesses that we plan on featuring. These range from restaurants, chiropractors, dentists, construction services, real estate, insurance, and of course, photography and web design. So let's support the local businesses that make our communities great.